Yeah. That's right.
I call the December 10, 2018 work session of Portsmouth City Council to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mrs. Lucasberg. Here. Mr. Moody.
Here.
Ms. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. Dr. Patton.
Yes. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council. The first presentation this evening, Mr. James Wright, City Engineer, will provide an update of key ongoing projects within the city. Also, there are two projects of which I am seeking City Council's direction on forward movement. They are Portside and the new fire station. The second presentation, Ms. Gloria Washington, Budget Manager, will present the FY 2020 budget calendar with key dates on the 2019 calendar. During the FY 2019 City Manager's budget message, members of City Council, I stated the following. With the recent events relating to the safety of this nation's students, school safety is the most important today than ever before. It is of critical importance that we keep our students safe. I recommended that City Council authorize an immediate $1 million from the general fund balance as a one-time allocation to begin the review of school security measures and identify where security enhancements are necessary. Tonight, I will present to you the key safety enhancements to PPS schools have made with this one-time funding. And lastly, the Virginia International Gateway desires to establish a new chassis staging yard for the port. The City Manager will update you on the staff's position on this matter and seek your support. Mr. Wright.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Tonight's briefing, you'll receive an update on the 7 projects listed on this slide. I'll pause at the end of each project update for discussion.
Let them look at it. Go back, Mr. Wright.
Okay, the first update is on the Churchland Bridge. As a reminder, this is a $35.5 million project. Approximately 63% of the funding is being supplied by the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth, VDOT. We've obtained all required state and federal agency regulatory clearances. That includes 12 federal agencies involving 17 federal acts or executive orders. There are 3 state agencies that we had to coordinate with. VMRC, for whom we have a permit from, DEQ, and the Department of Historic Resources. The public notice period for the Coast Guard bridge permit is closed. We've provided all the information that we need to about our own public notice process to the Coast Guard, and that bridge permit is being processed. Once we receive the bridge permit from the Coast Guard, we'll receive the permit from the Corps. We're providing final information to VDOT for their clearance so that we can advertise. So our planned advertisement is January. Construction starts in the spring, and it's a 2-year project.
Do you anticipate any problems with the Coast Guard?
No, we've cleared that was the last hurdle, the public notice process. And then there's certain things we have to do as far as the public notice that we have to do, post in libraries, post in a local paper, provide information of the notice to maritime folks within a 5-mile radius of the bridge, and also to adjacent property owners. And we did that, provided that information to the Coast Guard, and we haven't received anything from them that said there are any issues, so they're moving forward processing.
And the total price again?
Total price again?
Yeah.
$35.5 million.
Yeah.
And also, once we do that, actually get through with the bid process, we're working on a web page so we can have a link on the city website. We'll have the contractor, his information on the web page along with other facts of the bridge so people will be able to track progress during construction. And that's part of this process.
Any questions about this project?
Well, refresh our memory how the construction is going to go.
That's what I was thinking.
So it's technically two bridges, and so it's the northbound lanes, which are the lanes going out of town, the southbound lanes, which is the bridge coming into town. That's the newer of the two bridges. That bridge will be rehabilitated for the first 6 months of the project. Once that's complete, traffic will be shifted over to that bridge, and then we'll totally replace the northbound lanes. And that's 18 months, so it's a 2-year project.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
So once you do what you need to do on the incoming lane, which will take about 6 months,
Yes, ma'am?
the outgoing lane will be closed down, both lanes, for 18 months.
So 6 months, traffic will be on the northbound lanes going out of town.
6 months
It'll
over.
be closed while we do the rehabilitation. Then we'll shift traffic over to southbound lanes coming into town, and then that's an 18-month process.
18 months.
So I will mention that starting sometime this week, Dominion will be actually replacing lights that are out on the bridge. Doesn't have anything to do with this project. It's just that the lights are out and they need to be replaced, and so there'll be some lane closures as they replace the lights on the bridge.
And again, for the public, this is a totally new bridge for the westbound or
Correct.
northbound.
It's the 1950s bridge will be totally replaced.
But it will have the same profile.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
With a bike lanes.
Yeah, with it. Yeah.
Shared use path.
Yeah.
So for bike and pedestrians.
So we could walk across the bridge to exercise
Yeah, or ride a bike.
or ride a bike.
Other questions? Good questions.
Okay, the seawall replacement. Currently, we're working on Area 4, which is the area between the High Street Landing and the marina right here. We anticipate that construction will be completed sometime in January. If you take a look out, it's starting to take the shape of the seawall like everybody envisions. It's got the deck being poured, the railings are going in. Inclusive that to finish that, we have lighting, the power pedestals, and some other amenities to go in with that to complete that construction. And as far as future segments of the seawall, we provided our design consultant with comments on the Holiday Inn segment, and there's a small piece by the Flagpole Peninsula that also needs to be replaced. Once those comments are incorporated, we'll likely advertise for the Holiday Inn segment in January. And we learned that HRT was planning to do some upgrades to both their ferry landings at High Street Landing and also at the North Inlet. And so we'll be coordinating any work that they do with any future plans that we have for those two facilities.
HRT.
Yes.
Questions on this? Elizabeth.
I'm sorry.
The construction 4 area around the former Holiday Inn site, if
That's not
building the, that's not 4, you're right, sorry. The future
The Holiday Inn
down
segment.
where the Holiday Inn used to
Yes,
be.
ma'am.
Is anything we would do building that seawall, could that be detrimental to the sale of that property?
No, anything you do to that seawall is going to enhance your ability to market that site.
So somebody, in other words, somebody buying it wouldn't want to do a different kind of seawall there.
Well, no, that's
We'd need to
city.
connect to what's there anyway.
Based on how that seawall is constructed, to actually go in with a different kind of seawall will cost you probably twice as much as what we're planning on spending.
So we have to do it no matter what.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's
In
the
fact,
city
that was the first critical piece. If you go back to 2013, we did the study where we looked at the entire seawall and determined what the condition was. And we moved forward with the plans. Holiday Inn at that point was the worst section. In 2015, we just did some spot checks. That's when we took a step back. We closed off portions of 3 and 4 and realized that those two had actually jumped in front of the Holiday Inn seawalls. And so that's why we did the piece from Admiral's Landing and now this one first before Holiday Inn. So Holiday Inn's not getting any better. It's just that those other two jumped in front.
But really, in order to develop the Holiday Inn site, we got to do the seawall.
You gotta
Otherwise-
have it anyway.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's going to protect the land.
You mentioned the HRT, the ferry landings, they totally fund that, or do we have any cost sharing in that?
No cost sharing. It's funded by HRT, and I think they're getting federal funds to do that.
They are.
So the pavilion mast canopy, we've just recently, through working through all our design professionals, confirmed that the proposed design that for the new mast meets all the current applicable building codes. Even though it's only been, 15, 17 years, when that was built, we're under a different building code. So anytime you go to replace or modify a structure, you have to check to make sure that whatever you're doing conforms with the most current building code that you fall under. What we're doing is going to meet those building code standards, and so moving forward, we anticipate fabrication and construction of the new main mast to go from January to March. The canopy fabric was delivered to Span Systems, who basically put the tent up back when we had the Isabel, when we had the storm that tore it originally. That was delivered in September, and they're manipulating the panels right now so they can have everything delivered on site. So it's going to be like ants at a picnic at some point in time when you look over. Because they're going to be on top of each other for some point in time. So one group's going to be finishing and the other group's going to be moving in, with the ultimate end game being will be done by June 1.
Panels being manipulated is a term of art.
I use that term just because it's a tensioned product,
Uh-huh.
and so it's designed. And so, however, I'm not an expert on the process, but I know they have to stretch it and do certain things to get that tension in it, and then it gets delivered, and then they anchor it and cable it up. And there's some additional work they do on site, but most of the work they do to actually tension the fabric happens actually at their shop.
Bill?
And I take it the redesign will eliminate the possibility of any damage from water getting into any parts of the structure?
Yes, there'll be no tubular components like there are there now. So with water intrusion into the tube like happened last time, that won't happen. We're also, as part of this, as we go to put up the main mast, we'll end up doing a final inspection of all the other members out there, and whoever does that inspection will provide the city with an inspection plan, similar to what we do for bridges, garages, and any other structure, so that should there be something, we hope to catch it before it becomes a significant issue.
Have we,
Excuse me, go ahead.
have we exhausted all recourse on a flaw in the original design that led to the failure?
Solomon?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, again, part of that discussion and part of that determination, the final component of it won't occur until the mast comes down and folks get to walk right up to the mast. So we won't know that definitively until we get it down and everybody can kind of literally walk up to it and take the final look.
They're gonna do an inspection or analysis of the metal.
Correct. There has been some inspection of the metal. We did that early on to see if the structure was sufficient to stand as it is right now. But in terms of that final look and that close inspection to see how we got to the point where we had the failure, folks are waiting for that to come down where we can look at it. If need be, some destructive testing may need to be done, and that can't be done while it's upright.
Mr. Wright, would you give them the time frame for the taking down of the mast and the putting up of the new mast?
Yeah, so that's that January to March time frame. You'll start to see activity on there. It takes about 30 to 45 days to fabricate, then about 2 to 3 weeks to install.
Two questions. Will the new mast be triangular like that or a monopole?
It won't be a monopole. It'll be in 2 sections similar to this. We tried to keep the look and feel that's out there as close to the existing as possible, but it'll be a solid piece of steel.
The second question, any notion on how the water got into the pipe yet?
They found when we had the large lift in and we were able to actually get up to the very top of the mast, We saw a couple of areas where we suspect that it got in at that lower level, but also some spots where we think it got in at the top piece as well.
Okay. Any more questions? Thank you.
Okay, port side. Currently, construction is temporarily on hold. We had to do some redesign, and then there were some other factors that made us hold up the process. That being said, if we choose to restart with the existing contract, that contract will be complete, substantially complete, and be able to turn it over to vendors in that early May timeframe. And the vendor RFQ was also placed on hold temporarily.
What is the estimated cost of this project?
The total project
Yes.
is
$750,000.
I think it's,
750,000
I think the final bid is like 1.1.
Okay. What's even more?
How much do we have in it thus far?
You have
So currently just over 200,000.
And that's mostly site work?
Mostly site work, and there have been some components that were ordered that had a long lead time.
Dr. Pat?
Mayor, I would like to say to you and members of council, with the feedback from the public on the current location for Sunset Thursdays and the Crawford Gateway revitalization plan that has been presented to council, which calls for the High Street Landing location to become a pedestrian corridor, this location where the Sunset Thursdays are located currently is ideal for that strategic direction as the city moves forward. The Crawford Gateway revitalization plan has historically included Portside area as a part of the redevelopment along with the waterfront. And so we're at the point with the Portside project that, as we indicated, we're temporarily on hold for you, the members of City Council, to decide. You've heard from the public when we built High Street Landing with the amphitheater kind of steps, it was for the purpose of hosting, but until we had to move, nothing had been hosted there. The public calls to our attention that parking at the Portside site is very difficult. Some have been ticketed, and the owners of the building right there by Portside at a point decided that, you know, there were just difficulty with people parking there. So it's leaded for you all's discussion.
Well, none of those factors have changed since this council at our retreat decided with great fanfare to commit to a port side. The steps were there, end of High Street was there. Parking is what it is, and we decided to commit to a new port side at a cost of then was $750,000, and we put $200,000 in it. So I don't know that the public is, people like the Sunset Thursdays, but I'm not certain they viewed it from either or situation. So I don't know that the public's had a chance to really weigh into the scuttling of Portside. This is probably the first that some of them have heard of it.
Right.
In my view, it's two different venues. I mean, two different types of events. Portside would more than likely be maybe possibly year-round, maybe depending on the type of vendors that go there and the weather, whatever. But what's happening at Sunset Thursdays is Sunset Thursday. That's just totally different. I don't think that would fit down at Portside because the existing factors that are still there. I just see it as two different purposes and venues.
Down here, Elizabeth?
I do too. I agree with my colleagues. To me, this building of Portside is for, food and beverage and camaraderie. And if there's music, it's on the water stage. But this is something that I feel like could be open at least 5 or 6 months a year, every day of the week with those vendors, at least some certain hours as a gathering spot. And it's probably, in my mind, it's probably still open on Thursday, even though the crowd's down at High Street Landing for Sunset Thursday. I agree. I think it's two different things.
I feel the same. I mean, I have been an avid Sunset Thursday, and I like it down at the North Landing on the steps. I mean, it's easy access. It's
You mean on High Street
it's
Landing?
a floor at High Street Landing.
Yeah.
Yes. And this, seasonal. They're both seasonal, but a different market, maybe a flutist or the little steel drum. You can still draw two different kinds of crowds, all year round. So I think more money for our buck, and we've already spent $200,000 in it. I mean, we can't just throw that away and stop it. So continue for what it's worth, and still keep our Sunset Thursdays at North Landing,
And
High Street Landing.
Well, we've been hearing it for a long time before we voted to bring it back. There's a lot of citizens that had been asking for it to come back ever since it had closed. And that has been for a long time. And up till last year, annually, the Service League held an event. And every time I went to that event, everybody was like, this is how Portside used to be. Everybody came to that event annually, and they wished that was the way it was, and they could come there more often. And that was the way it was when we discussed it. It's almost 2 years ago now when we had that retreat that we first discussed it. And I think the citizens are excited about it coming back. And we can get the input, but I don't think their minds have changed, because people have been continually asking about it since the time that the original Portside was taken down. So I think they look forward to it. And the majority of this project, what was the dollar amount for the grant that we got for it? Wasn't there?
It was 108, 106,000.
when did we get that in? 2016? We'll have to look at what that amount was.
The port grant.
Yeah, the port.
Right.
All right.
Mayor, so the council will know, one of the things in the hold was, and the holdup, is what is it that they had to do for the ground to set or compact or?
Surcharge.
We had to surcharge. We had to build the ground up because it's a floodplain, and so that's why it's elevated to where you see it right now.
And that's where it will remain elevated to that level? Okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll move forward. Go on, Mr. Wright.
Okay, the fire station location study was completed earlier this year. 4 fire stations identified for relocation and replacement to improve the current operations and to provide facilities that will support the needs of Portsmouth Fire Rescue and Emergency Services for the next 30 to 50 years. The team that worked on the fire station locations study got together at council direction and prioritized and selected the optimal locations for the fire stations that were identified in that study for replacement using that data. And this, as you can remember, the red dots are the existing stations here. The gray dots are the stations planned for replacement, that they identify for replacement. So Hodges Ferry Station, moving a little bit more in the center. Winchester, move a little bit more to the center. This is the Victory Station that moves a little bit more to the center. And similar here with the Craddock Station that moves a little bit more to the center. And what the thought was, if you look over the data in this study, as you move these stations more towards the center instead of being on the fringe, to provide better overall service to all the communities. So as you move these 2 stations closer in, provide better service to that trusted neighborhood. So there is a new fire station proposed as part of the 2020 CIP budget. If you look online and you look at the 2006 UDA strategic plan for the revitalization of Craddock, which included collaboration by the Neighborhood Plan Commission and City Council. If you look at initiative number 3, which is titled The Renaissance for Afton Square, There are 4 alternatives presented, and each one of those alternatives recommend removing the fire station from that square to revitalize it. If you look at Initiative 4 in that same study, it actually recommends moving that fire station somewhere along the frontage of George Washington Highway, and I think in that study it was George Washington Park, but that's where the skate park is right now. What we determined from our analysis is that the optimal location for the relocated Station 11 would be closer to the intersection of George Washington and Frederick Boulevard.
With that presentation, which you all had the fire station study some months ago, at that time, I think the question was asked, with the fire station located in that vicinity, did we think that the Navy would be interested in some kind of partnering or something? We have not moved forward with that discussion with the Navy. We're trying to glean from council staff moving forward on looking for property in its optimal location, which would be near Frederick Boulevard and George Washington Highway intersection. So with your concurrence, we'll begin to look for property in that area, and Mr. Wright and our team could begin to reach out to the Navy for some discussion. Because possibly government may help us pay for it.
Just for people watching that are looking at this, I believe there's a typo on the slide.
Yes, there is. It should be
that should be Station 11. I just didn't want the people thinking they were going to lose their station on Frederick Boulevard and they're going to move all the way to George Washington.
Yeah.
So it's
You're
supposed
correct,
to be
sir.
11.
It's supposed to be 11.
Okay.
Correct.
Thanks for catching that.
Yeah.
Right.
So to make it clear, that new station proposed as of FY 2020 is the Craddock station,
Yes, sir.
because it didn't really say what the new station was.
The replacement of it.
So, and there won't be one in the Afton Parkway area. It'll be relocated to the Frederick corridor. That's what you're saying.
Frederick and
George Washington,
Right.
Frederick, George Washington corridor.
Bill.
Right.
Do we currently control any property in that area?
There's some city property in that area. Some of it's not of suitable size for a fire station. You'd have to assemble some additional land. There's some land just off of.
Well, the reason why I ask, I think most of us are familiar with that intersection, and I can't visualize any vacant parcel large enough to accommodate a fire station.
Is there any?
At the intersection.
You don't know any? Okay.
So the study calls for it to be from anywhere from a half a mile within that optimal location, and so we draw a radius around that and start to look.
Be great if Scott Annex had enough property on the gate.
Need approximately 2 acres.
That's on the other side of the tracks. That part of that's the tracks that cross George Washington Highway is part of the problem with the response from Station 1. So we don't want to go over that and tie them both up on that side of the tracks.
So you're looking for direction to start looking for a site in that or sites to
Right.
bring back to us.
Right, in that radius of between Frederick Boulevard and George Washington Highway.
All right. What do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, go.
Bill? You
I'm probably for leaving it in Craddock.
When we,
okay?
Okay.
Let's get right.
Yeah, I'm just, wondering, maybe we can buy out some of the strip clubs, huh?
I knew that was going to come up.
There's some great property there.
Oh, it is.
It used to be Burger Chef. Burger Chef.
Yeah, yes, just visualizing where it could fit,
I ain't going to say that.
Stations or?
No, we're keeping the same number of stations. Yes, ma'am.
That's right.
Yeah, eight plus
Probably
the optimal number. They're just not in the proper locations to provide the service that we need.
Can you accommodate both voices that we're hearing? Yes, look for sites, but also relook at Craddock as a mechanism for revitalizing the square?
Right. Mayor, what we'd like to do, and we presented this 6 months ago, 7 months ago to council, the entire study on the fire station and
Come a few times.
We're right. It's a while, and the why of the optimal sites going forward that could serve 30 to 50 years from now, and where they have projected the growth. So as it pertains to this particular fire station, we could get that information back out to council so you can see why that location and why where they are now aren't optimal for the next 30 to 50 years for the fire service that the city will need. We could do that, and at the same time, yes.
I thought it was clear that the study, the point was to take those 4 stations and
move them, get them where they need to be.
Closer to each other.
But I recall part of the presentation, that was the reason because we were asking for a Truxton fire station.
Right.
And that's when this study was completed, and that's why they're moving the stations inward, so we have the overlap, so we have better response for the entire city, and that's how these locations were picked. It wasn't just because of the intersection area or whatever, it was done because of response time and distance, and that's, giving everybody in the city the best response time.
And where we've got property being redeveloped with more things, more fires to put out.
I think I'd like to hear from the fire chief
Right, and we'll bring
at
them
the
back.
appropriate time.
Okay, we can do that. And and he was a part of the study and the team and the consultant, so we'll bring that back as we continue.
The team was mostly the fire department.
Right.
So,
All right.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
the Sportsplex says a plan for the athletic fields, parking, stormwater management, and walking trails and other amenities is complete. We plan to advertise this week. Construction will likely start in February with substantial completion in May. We anticipate project close out the first part of June. We'll advertise for demolition of the school building down here in the corner in January, and that'll start our demolition process for the buildings out on that site. But this is the parcel that's our recreational parcel, so you have the renovated gym here. You have the fields that'll be approximately there. You have a walking trail that'll go around these fields. There's some stormwater management here, parking lot, and then once this is demoed, you have the ability to determine what goes in this back corner, and you can complete this recreational parcel. And then this parcel, once we demo the buildings, is up for City Council or Economic Development to decide what to do.
I can't hear you, Mr. Jumper. I can't hear you.
Are you on, Bill? Did you have a question?
You can go ahead. I have a question, but I'll save it.
What is the timing of the demolition? It sounds like it's going to be phased in two phases.
So there's CIP money for the demolition to start out here. We were waiting to see and you'll see in the next slide, we have some demolition projects that are going. We were waiting to see what the prices came back for those before we started demolishing buildings out here, determine what that magnitude was going to be. Based on those bids that we just received, we're going to start this one first. So it's about the same time that these fields open up, this building's out of the way, and so everything on this side will be free and clear, and then we can focus our efforts on the rest.
Bill?
Do we have any usage or attendance figures for the to the gym or the exercise facility?
We could get that from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I think that would be good. A fantastic facility. I'm just curious as to how much use it's getting.
We'll get that for you. We'll send it to you.
Other questions? Right.
We've determined that no need for the pool. That's going to go away too, right?
Nothing. No, wait.
Go ahead.
Okay, no,
We're
they're,
being very tentative tonight, so let's pick it up.
what'd you say, Mayor? I didn't hear
So
you.
we're being tentative. That's
There has been no, in the first 10, in that 10-acre build-out, or what we are addressing in that 10 acres, there has not been a design or budget or plan or anything to build a pool. The first, we were dealing with getting the sportsplex renovated. We got that. The next part with the CDBG funding is for the fields, and that comes through the federal government. Now that would be for in the 2019. We don't know what the federal government, if anything, would give in 2020, which would be, the council had designated over 90% of that money coming in, all being used out at the sports complex since around 2017 or 2016. So down the road.
I only bring it up because there's an existing pool there.
Right there.
And whether or not that could be, reused or...
Well, we're using the pool. We need a new pool.
Renovated it
Yeah, the pool
a couple
is.
years ago.
Yeah, the pool is. We need a new pool.
Is it, you saying what?
The pool probably was built in the 60s out there, so it's a small one like Cavalier Manor. And we have staff, particularly Parks and Recreation, talked about the need for a pool, but the pool that they described and we would need in the area to be year-round would be an actually aquatic center, not just to do a pool that you can't use, but as all of our pools are, we can only use them in the summer. And our school swimming teams were using Girls Inc., but that closed, and so I would say swimming teams are using the Churchland Y right now for the swimming, but there's no access in our city to, and you all call it Olympic size swimming pool, which that's what you need if you're going to have swim meets for high schools.
Ray, you were asking our need for a pool,
Right.
and whether or not this one meets that need.
Yeah. And nothing
does.
to answer.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
No.
Yeah, that's all I was at.
Right.
Other question?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And the last project is demolition of buildings for economic development. So there are 3 sites. And this site's here, right across the street. Former police administration at 700, 710 Crawford. We have the former Mary Jane Bakery site, and also the former Evans Electric site. We went out for ad for those and got those bids back. We're vetting the contractors right now. We anticipate having those under contract in January. The contracts will include abatement, and it's 150 days contract time total for all 3 sites.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Washington. Mrs. Washington will now come forward, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, with the 2020 budget calendar.
Good evening, Mayor Rowe, Vice Mayor Simmons, members of City Council. This evening, I will present key budget dates for the upcoming FY 2020 budget process. You will see before you several dates in January and February where we will have City Council work sessions. Tuesday, January 22nd, Monday, February 11th, on various budget topics, as we did in previous years regarding strategic budget initiatives such as unique financing opportunities, workforce development, and education, and other recommended topics. On Monday, February 25th, this is proposed as a City Council meeting with the school board. Tuesday, February 26th, more proposed city council work sessions, and Monday, March 11th. On Thursday, March 21st, school board adopts proposed budget and requested local funding. Monday, March 25th, the city manager's presentation of the proposed FY 2020 budget, and this is in compliance with City Code -2-29, where the proposed budget has to be presented to City Council on or before April 1st of each year. Friday, April 5th, State of the City Address. Monday, April 8th, City Council work session on the proposed budget. Tuesday, April 9th, the first public hearing on the FY 2020 proposed operating and CIP budget and tax rates. Monday, April 22nd, another proposed public work session, if required, if necessary. Then Tuesday, we have also scheduled the second public hearing, FY 2020 proposed operating CIP budget and tax rates. Monday, May 13th, public work session on the proposed budget. And on Tuesday, May 14th, regular city council meeting adoption for the operating budget, school budget, CIP, and tax rates. This concludes this presentation. Are there any questions?
Public hearings on the budget.
Yeah, those are the dates up there.
Comments? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, the next two presentations I will be making, so I will come to the desk. And you're going to put the... Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, as I introduced earlier in the FY 2019 City Manager's budget message, members of City Council, in the wake of the Parkland school shootings in March of 2018, I requested you approved for a one-time $1 million of funding to Portsmouth Public Schools for school safety upgrades. We have with us representing the schools this evening, and many of you probably have not met Mr. Lawrence Whiting. If you will stand, he's with Portsmouth Public Schools, and he is the new Director of Auxiliary Services. And Mr. Whiting has been working with us and our team, keeping us updated on the projects as they have gone forward. Portsmouth Public Schools have installed security desks with chairs in the main entrance of all schools. The desks are staffed by school security officers and other personnel during the operational hours of the school, or if there are special programs and events. At each security desk and in the main office is a new visitor management system that is used by schools across this nation. The system allows the security officer to scan the visitor's government-issued ID, which checks the federal, state, and local sex offender registry. Upon clearance, the visitor is issued a temporary affixed badge where you can pull off with their picture on the badge to affix to their outer clothing. Also, this lets the school staff know who's in the building and who's a visitor by seeing the badge that is affixed. Any questions thus far?
No.
Was that system in place at Simonsdale?
Most recently.
Does anybody know?
Mr. Whiting, could you come
to the
up?
lectern, please, so we can pick you up on the mic.
Good evening. The system actually is in place at Simonsdale. This incident we had there, the gentleman was barely inside the door. And so...
But he was inside the door?
Yes. All of them are set up inside, and all of them are on the security desk, which are basically inside the door. The only way to preclude that is to build a vestibule area, so there would be a two-door entry system.
So he had not submitted his ID or anything at that point?
No, he had just come into the door. It just walked in the front door, and all the security desks are generally, depending on the school and the layout, it's going to be a few feet away from the actual door, entrance door.
Stay here for a minute.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
In a CIP meeting that we had today with the school's team, they called to our attention that we only have one school that has, and what do you call it?
It's a vestibule, which has
a vestibule, of which I walk into the building, but I'm not really in the school because I've got to go to walk through other doors, and that school is Norcom High School. All of the other schools, if I open the door, I'm in the school. And I didn't know that until today.
I was at Brighton Elementary School last Friday doing a program, and I went through that system, and it was interesting to watch, you know, with my driver's license and the picture ID, and it reminded me of what you do now at Norfolk General Hospital and
Everywhere.
Children's Hospital.
That's right.
You know, with the picture and everything.
That's right. And it doesn't matter who you are. When you go in there, you are to show your driver's license, and they'll fix the visitor's badge on you. Thanks, Mr. Whiting. By the end of this month, all schools will be equipped with school security cameras that record and maintain activities within the hallways and key areas within the school, to include the gyms, the libraries, the cafeteria, stairwells, and other areas within the school. There are monitors located in key places within the school where the cameras pan across all of the said areas. And this information is recorded. And Mr. Whiting indicated that if something happens, they can go back and retrieve and see exactly what has happened or what has gone on in any of those areas that are a part of this security camera process. All school administrators, security staff, and other personnel are now equipped with Motorola radios, which allows communication throughout the building and access to the city's police if necessary. Schools can also communicate with staff in other school buildings. In the past, with the old radios that they had, you actually had to get your cell phone or get to a rotary phone to call for help. Now these radios are equipped where they can get to our city police immediately if something takes place that they need. And this puts in the hands of Portsmouth Public Schools 400 new radios through this allocation of the $1 million. These expenditures brings us right at $989,000, and Mr. Whiting indicated today that there are just some small things they want to get, and I told him to just go on and get them because it was a full $1 million allocation. Both Dr. Bracey and his administrative team have shown and expressed appreciation for City Council approving for them to be able to address some school safety needs within immediate in this fiscal year.
Are metal detectors now operational in all schools?
Yeah. Yes, sir. All the schools have metal detectors. Well, high schools, have the walk-through, and the other part of the grant, we're buying the wands for the elementary schools and middle schools.
So in a sequence, you would enter the school, have your ID scanned, and then go through a metal detector?
Actually, the way it's processed right now, you go through a metal detector first, and then you would come in and have your ID scanned.
So the gentleman that entered Simonsdale with a with a gun.
On a high school.
Did the metal detector alert anyone?
We don't have them yet and we don't have them at the elementary schools and the middle schools.
Okay, so all
Excuse
the
me,
schools.
at the middle schools, we do have a walkthrough. Each one has one walkthrough. The high schools have 3 walkthroughs, and the elementary schools don't have any of the walkthroughs at this time.
But that will be done?
Well, we're looking, again, at the elementary school, we're looking to buy the wands. The walkthroughs are quite expensive, and there's not enough money left in the budget, but we can afford the wands that you see at games and events and things like that that'll scan the person as they come in the door.
I think it'd be good to get a price on what it would take to install wands. All right, but wands, the person with the wands got to be there, and sometimes that's not too thorough. So I would like to see an estimate on what the cost would be to equip the additional schools with permanent metal detectors.
Yes, sir. I can get that to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
All right. You're going to go to the Mac chassis. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, the next item is the Vig Chassis Yard. And I'm going to put a map up for you as I share with you this particular issue. On October 26, a meeting was held requested by Mr. Dustin Reinhardt, who is the Community and Government Affairs Director at VIG. And he met with myself and the mayor regarding a proposed project that the port wanted to call to our attention that they were moving forward on. VIG identified property on the CXS Railroad property, which is in the Midtown area of our city, that is bound between the Martin Luther King Freeway and the Westbury development. The property was identified by the port to establish a chassis yard, and the chassis are those, I call them the trailers. You have the truck and the trailer that they put the containers on as they're moving them across highways and byways and on the port. This chassis yard that was identified, this property, would have had 600 to 1,000 trucks going to and from this location 6 days a week from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and on Saturdays from 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. On Monday, December the 3rd, I, along with city staff, met with Mr. Reinhardt and the port's operation manager to express the city's staff's objection of a chassis yard being located anywhere in the city. The port has 3 locations, of which they had a chassis yard at the VIG site, and they indicated that they were intending to close that. Before I share with you what we called to their attention as impact, I was reminded, I was here, but I did not remember it, that the Penners Point Interchange project of 2002 to 2005 was for the sole purpose of taking trucks, as many trucks as possible, off of our city streets. It would remove traffic, most significantly container trucks, from the historic Port Norfolk neighborhood, and the projection was that the residents would see a reduction in traffic by more than 80%. The new interchange of Penners Point also would provide more direct routes for industrial traffic to and from the Portsmouth Marine Terminal, creating direct access to the terminal. And the project also ensured faster, easier access to the Midtown Tunnel for commuters. As you can see, the City of Portsmouth, since the opening of the Virginia International Gateway, is continuing to be challenged by the growth of the port and the desire of the port to increase the truck traffic on our city streets. I called to your attention that, and looking at the impact, specific locations It would affect our retail, which is our Midtown Retail District, our Martin Luther King I-164 movement during rush hours. Our schools and recreation sites include Clark, I.C. Norcom, Joseph E. Parker, school bus routes, HRT bus routes, and then the communities of Westbury, historic neighborhoods, Seaboard Square, and Hamilton Place. In that meeting, I indicated to Mr. Reinhardt that we were not supporting a chassis yard being located anywhere within the city that would impact the quality of life to our citizens and straddle us with our economic development. It was interesting that a couple of days after that meeting, I was coming down High Street early morning. It was probably about 7:30. I had my radio on, windows up, it's cold. But I heard some rumbling coming by, and I jumped as I was driving because I didn't know what it was. And when I turned, it was a truck with a chassis flying by me, heading on High Street down toward where you would probably get on the Martin Luther King. But that one truck and chassis said to me, if I jumped at that one, what would our city be if 600 to 1,000 are moving on our city streets 6 days a week from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m.? So I open it to you, Mayor, and discussion.
I participated in that first meeting. We did not know what they wanted to meet about. They indicated that they had been approached by the drivers, truck drivers, because of the long wait that they encounter on the terminal per se. And so their option was to make the wait take place and eliminate the wait to the greatest extent possible on the CSX property. And because you can see the MLK, it runs north-south. That pops out because it's new. Then you see the interstate that goes on a diagonal towards the bottom. At that meeting, they proposed coming down Godwin Street, right through Westbury, moving, and that number that they had that particular day was 600. But
that day,
to do it twice, you get to 1,200. And we said, that's nutty. That's crazy. We turned down a cell tower that was passive, and you're going to bring that much truck traffic. And then after that, the other meetings were through the city manager and the traffic engineer. My personal feeling on council is that they need to take care of this on the terminal,
that's right,
not off-site.
That's right.
I concur.
100%. Totally.
Okay.
And how do they even find, I mean, you can see this when you're driving on MLK, that it's a vacant spot. So, I mean, they just carving out land that they want to take on. I mean, how did this even become an option?
This, I agree, this should not be an option.
Should not.
I remember the fight years ago growing up in Port Norfolk, because Port Norfolk was the truck route when West Norfolk Bridge dumped off to Bayview to get to PMT. And part of it was down Mount Vernon Avenue, then they changed it to Chautauqua, then they cut over Virginia Avenue. But there's residents that live on all of those streets, and if they're going to bring that kind of truck traffic, the dangers that come with those trucks and all the motor carrier vehicles is something that we do not want to subject our residents to.
Not at all.
And none of those, I mean, so they moved west. Constitution doesn't work. Confederate doesn't work. There's no, it just does not make sense at all. So it sounds like there's a consensus that not off the terminal. Take care of your problem on the terminals.
Just not compatible with quality of life in the neighborhoods.
After the meeting, Mayor, you have, and members of council, you have in front of you the letter that I have sent to the port. I will keep you posted. We understand that they do have a contract in hand. They had said to us they were talking with CSX in Jacksonville, and it was for 5 years, but Intel tell us they have the contract to lease that property, but it's for 10 years. But we're saying no, 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 no. No. That's where we are. Okay?
Yes, sir.
They can't force this. Do they have to get some permits and approvals for use of that property?
They already got it.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council, there was,
It's industrial.
I believe, at least one inquiry, but since the last 2 meetings, I have expressed the city's position with counsel for CSX to let them know that the city is not approving of that particular position. There are probably a number of issues depending on how they try to accomplish this off-site. But we have told everyone that we're in contact with that we have a problem with it, and our understanding is based on folks with transportation interest in terms of the truckers, they aren't a fan of this particular plan either.
What's the zoning on that property?
It is a CSX property as it exists right now. My suspicion is it's probably industrial just because it's a rail yard, but it could be even a little looser than that because it's literally a lay down yard. There's nothing there.
Do we know for certain what the zoning is?
Mr. Baldwin, do you know what the zoning is?
This property is right-of-way, and we don't zone into rail right-of-way. So it doesn't carry any particular zoning.
So we don't want it there. What would be their recourse? What would be our recourse to keep?
Well, we control the streets, so we can restrict traffic on the streets. And if the truckers are concerned about the weight, they ought to be really concerned if they get a traffic summons.
Many of them.
Interstate commerce wouldn't come into play if we restrict access to the property?
As long as there are some issues with regard to rail laws, but only to the extent that it is used for rail purposes. This starts getting away from rail purposes, so it becomes a bit of a question if they do try to put it to that purpose. A number of protections that we would normally say were in place tend to come away if it ends up being used for some other purpose.
I would think that we want to be prepared to protect the communities and know what our legal ramifications are.
We have had a number of conversations about what the response could or should be. That's what precipitated the contact with CSX. I'm waiting for a response from their lawyer in Jacksonville, I believe. And so we are have some contingencies in play.
Okay.
Mayor, that concludes the presentations for this evening.
We do have a need for a closed session, but I have a thing that I'd like to get council's consensus on. The General Assembly starts in a month, and the city of Portsmouth has had a man in Richmond, a lobbyist, for a good long period of time, well before 2005. And it's my understanding that that contract has expired.
Yes.
With council's consensus, I recommend that we ask and direct the city manager and her team to put out an RFP as quickly as possible, see if we can get that process done before the start of the General Assembly so that we can have in place a lobbyist.
Yes, we will.
Everybody agree?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay. We're already on. Thank you.
We got to start working on these toll.
Yeah, absolutely. That's and speaking of toll relief, and I think I heard you say that you would like to brief council on that. on toll relief or have a discussion of that?
Yes, we will have that first part of January.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, we have a need. Any other things? We have a need to go in closed session. Is there a motion?
I move to go into closed meeting, A, pursuant to the Code subsection 2.2-3711, 8.7, for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, specifically regarding the commons at Portsmouth Center, and B, pursuant to Virginia Code subsection 2.2-3711, 8.3, for the purpose of discussing the acquisition and/or disposition of publicly held or controlled real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, specifically regarding 206 High Street and 8 Crawford Parkway and other related properties.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this motion? The motion's been made. The question is to approve the motion. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Ms. Simmons?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Rowe?
Yes, we're in closed session. Everybody